Today we have 3 chilling Craigslist stories. Please make sure to like and subscribe. My heart raced as I refreshed the Craigslist page for the umpteenth time. I had been searching for a new job for weeks, and desperation had led me to the depths of the online classifieds. It wasn't the first time I had scoured the site, but something about this particular ad piqued my interest. The post was titled "Unconventional Employment Opportunity, Guaranteed Thrills." The ad provided scant details, but the offer was too enticing to pass up. It promised quick and easy cash for those willing to take on unique assignments. I had no idea what to expect, but I was desperate for a change in my life, and this was my last hope. The ad included an email address, so I composed a brief message expressing my interest and hit send. Within minutes, my inbox chimed with a response. "Congratulations! You've been selected. Please come to 1313 Darkwood Lane at 9 p.m. tonight. Dress warmly and bring a flashlight. Payment upon completion. Do not speak to anyone about this opportunity." The cryptic message left me with more questions than answers, but I couldn't ignore the opportunity. The thought of quick cash and an adventure thrilled me, despite the nagging voice of reason warning me to be cautious. I dressed in dark, warm clothing and tucked a flashlight into my coat pocket. As the evening approached, anxiety gnawed at my insides, but I couldn't turn back now. I arrived at 1313 Darkwood Lane, a secluded house nestled among dense trees. An eerie chill hung in the air, and the moon's pale glow barely illuminated the path ahead. The wind whispered secrets through the branches, and the house stood like a sentinel in the gloom. I hesitated, my breath forming misty clouds in the frigid air. With a deep breath, I approached the house and rapped on the heavy wooden door. It creaked open, revealing a tall, shadowy figure. I couldn't make out their face, hidden beneath a hooded cloak. "You came," the figure hissed, its voice a dry rasp. "Good. Follow me." I stepped inside, the door closing ominously behind me. The interior was dimly lit, and I could barely make out the details of the old, decrepit furniture and faded wallpaper. I followed the figure down a narrow, winding corridor until we reached a room bathed in an eerie, greenish light. In the center of the room was a table covered in strange, arcane symbols, and surrounding it were 5 other people, all dressed similarly to me. I was beginning to realize that I wasn't the only one who had been drawn into this mysterious adventure. The hooded figure stepped forward and raised its hand, palm up. "Place your flashlight on the table," it commanded. I obeyed, setting my flashlight down alongside the others. The room grew darker, and the hooded figure beckoned us to join hands around the table. "Now, listen carefully," it whispered. "Tonight, you have a choice. The path you take will determine your payment." My heart pounded as the figure explained our options. We could choose between 2 doors, each leading to an unknown fate. One promised wealth beyond imagination, while the other, well, the figure didn't elaborate on what the other door held. It was a gamble, a test of our bravery and desire for riches. The room fell silent as we contemplated our choices. The air grew heavy with tension. My mind raced, and my palms grew sweaty as I tried to decipher the cryptic situation. I could hear the others breathing heavily, but no one spoke. In the dim light, I saw their faces contorted with fear and doubt. The hooded figure took a step back, allowing us to make our choice. The door on the left seemed to beckon me, promising a life of luxury and comfort, but it also felt too good to be true. The door on the right was shrouded in darkness, and something about it made my skin crawl, but it was the unknown that unnerved me the most. With a deep breath, I reached out and placed my hand on the door to the left. As I turned the doorknob, the room around us began to shimmer, and a blinding light engulfed everything. It was as if reality itself was being torn apart. Panic coursed through my veins as I stumbled through the door, leaving behind the hooded figure and my fellow participants. I found myself in a place unlike anything I could have imagined. A lavish mansion, dripping with opulence, stretched before me. Gold-framed paintings adorned the walls, and crystal chandeliers illuminated the grand halls. It was a paradise beyond my wildest dreams, and I was overwhelmed by the sheer extravagance of it all. But my joy was short-lived. As I explored the mansion, I realized the truth about my newfound wealth. This place was a gilded cage, and I was trapped within its confines. I was no longer free, no longer in control of my destiny. I had unwittingly made a deal with the devil, and the price of my wealth was my freedom. Days turned into weeks, and then months. I was waited on hand and foot by servants who never spoke and never showed their faces. I could indulge in every desire, but there was an emptiness in my heart that no amount of luxury could fill. I had everything I could ever want, yet I had nothing at all. I became a prisoner in that mansion, haunted by the choice I had made on that fateful night. The mansion itself seemed to take on a sinister life of its own, its walls closing in on me, its chandeliers swinging ominously. I realized that I was not alone in that house. There were other souls, just like me, who had chosen the same door and were now trapped in this gilded purgatory. The hooded figure's warning echoed in my mind: the path you take will determine your payment. The wealth I had gained was a cruel payment, one that had cost me my freedom, my sanity, and my soul. I longed for escape, for a way to undo the choice I had made. But the mansion held me in its grip, and I couldn't find the door that led back to that dimly lit room on Darkwood Lane. I was a prisoner of my own greed, forever haunted by the consequences of my decision. As the years passed, the mansion's opulence faded, revealing the decaying reality beneath the facade. The servants became skeletal, ghostly figures, and the walls of the mansion closed in further, threatening to swallow me whole. One day, as I wandered through the increasingly dilapidated mansion, I stumbled upon a room I hadn't seen before. It was a room of mirrors, and in each reflection, I saw a different version of myself, each one making the same choice, each one suffering the same fate. I had become a cautionary tale, a warning to all who were tempted by the promise of quick riches and easy solutions. I had entered the world of Craigslist ads, drawn in by the allure of the unknown, and now I was paying the price. I had a choice to make once again: remain in the never-ending nightmare of the mansion, or seek a way to break the curse that bound me here. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I couldn't give up. I had to find a way to escape this living nightmare and warn others of the dangers that lurked in the depths of the internet, where Craigslist ads could lead to horrors beyond imagination. And so, my journey continues, as I search for the elusive door that will lead me back to Darkwood Lane, to the moment when I first made that fateful choice. I can only hope that I will find a way to set things right, to break the curse, and to finally be free from the sinister consequences of that Craigslist ad. But as the mansion's walls close in around me, and the ghosts of my fellow prisoners moan in the shadows, I can't help but wonder if I'm already too far gone, if I'll ever escape the inescapable. My story serves as a warning to all who may stumble upon a Craigslist ad promising thrills and riches. Be careful what you wish for the price of temptation may be higher than you can ever imagine. I've always been an avid fan of horror stories, spending countless nights lost in the spine-chilling tales that sent shivers down my spine. Little did I know, my own horror story was about to unfold, and it all began with a seemingly innocent Craigslist ad. It was a stormy night, rain lashing against my window like the desperate cries of a lost soul. I was curled up on my couch, wrapped in a cozy blanket, browsing through Craigslist ads just for the fun of it. Amidst the mundane listings, an intriguing one caught my eye: antique doll collection, free to a good home. The ad contained a single picture, a group of old dolls, their porcelain faces painted with eerie smiles. The message beneath the picture read, "Collector passed away. Must find new home for these beauties. Contact for details." My curiosity piqued. I sent an email inquiring about the dolls. To my surprise, I received a response almost immediately. The sender, a woman named Mrs. Blackwood, informed me that the dolls were still available and that I could pick them up the next day. Ignoring the uneasy feeling that settled in my stomach, I agreed to meet her at her address. The next evening, I found myself standing in front of a decrepit mansion. Its windows were dark, and the only sound that filled the air was the howling of the wind. Mrs. Blackwood greeted me at the door, her gaunt face barely visible under the dim porch light. She led me to a room filled with dusty old dolls, their eyes seemingly following my every move. As I examined the dolls, Mrs. Blackwood shared a chilling tale. The collector, a woman named Evelyn, had believed that the dolls were possessed by spirits. She claimed to hear whispers at night, voices that spoke of ancient curses and vengeful souls. Evelyn had spent years researching the dolls, trying to unlock the secrets behind their haunted existence. Despite my growing unease, I felt a strange connection to the dolls. Mrs. Blackwood insisted that they needed a home, someone who could understand and care for them. Against my better judgment, I agreed to take them. That night, as I arranged the dolls in my living room, I heard the first whisper. At first, I dismissed it as a product of my overactive imagination. But the whispers grew louder, filling the room with an otherworldly presence. I tried to ignore them, convincing myself that it was just the wind or the creaking of the old house. Days turned into weeks, and the whispers became more insistent. They spoke of forgotten sins and the darkness that lurked within the dolls. I couldn't sleep, haunted by nightmares of twisted faces and hollow eyes. I became obsessed with uncovering the truth, diving deep into Evelyn's research, hoping to find a way to silence the voices that tormented me. One night, as I delved into an ancient grimoire that Evelyn had left behind, I discovered a ritual that claimed to banish the spirits from the dolls. Desperate and fueled by fear, I gathered the necessary ingredients and performed the ritual in the dead of night. The air grew thick with anticipation as I chanted the incantation, my voice trembling with a mixture of terror and determination. At first, it seemed like the ritual had worked. The room fell silent, the oppressive atmosphere lifting. Relief washed over me, and I allowed myself to believe that it was finally over. But as the first light of dawn broke through the curtains, the whispers returned, more menacing than ever. I realized then that I had only angered the spirits, stirring their wrath with my feeble attempts to banish them. They grew bolder, their voices echoing in my ears day and night. I could no longer distinguish between reality and the supernatural, my sanity slipping through my fingers like sand. In a desperate bid for escape, I decided to rid myself of the dolls once and for all. I gathered them, their porcelain faces now contorted with malice, and took them to an abandoned house deep in the woods. With trembling hands, I buried them in the cold earth, hoping that the darkness of the forest would swallow their malevolent energy. For a brief moment, it seemed like the nightmare was finally over. The whispers ceased, and I allowed myself to hope that I had broken the curse. But as I turned to leave, a cold wind swept through the trees, carrying with it a chorus of voices that sent chills down my spine. The spirits were not bound by the physical realm, they had followed me, their anger and hunger for revenge palpable in the air. I ran, my heart pounding in my chest, the echoes of the spirits' laughter ringing in my ears. I didn't stop until I reached the nearest town, where I collapsed, gasping for air and begging for help. The people around me exchanged worried glances, sensing the depth of my terror. To this day, I live in fear, haunted by the memory of the haunted dolls and the relentless whispers that drove me to the brink of madness. I warn others now, urging them to resist the temptation of Craigslist ads that promise more than they can deliver. The online world is a breeding ground for darkness, where malevolent forces lurk behind innocent words and enticing images. As I share my story, I can still hear the faintest whisper in the wind, a reminder that the spirits are never truly gone. They linger in the shadows, waiting for the next unsuspecting soul to cross their path. Beware the siren call of the internet, for within its depths, the most terrifying horrors await, ready to consume those who dare to listen. I never thought I would find myself scrolling through Craigslist ads, searching for a new apartment. But, after my recent breakup, I needed to find a place that I could afford on my own. It was a daunting task, and I knew I had to be cautious. As I navigated the site, I couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. There was something about the anonymity of the platform that made me uneasy. One evening, as I scoured the housing section, a peculiar listing caught my eye. It was titled "Cozy Apartment in the Heart of the City, Unbeatable Price." The photos showed a charming, old building with a beautifully landscaped courtyard. The rent was almost too good to be true, and the description claimed it was a hidden gem. I sent a message to the contact listed, a person named Victor, inquiring about the apartment. To my surprise, I received a response within minutes. Victor explained that the apartment had just become available, and he was looking for someone to move in as soon as possible. He suggested we meet the next day to discuss the details. The following day, I arrived at the address Victor had provided. It was a gloomy, overcast day, and the building had an eerie vibe. The courtyard, so picturesque in the photos, now felt like a neglected garden overrun by weeds. I hesitated but decided to go in, thinking the interior might be more promising. Victor greeted me with a warm smile, but something about his eyes sent shivers down my spine. They were cold, calculating, and seemed to hide a deep, dark secret. We toured the apartment, and while the interior was relatively well maintained, there was an unsettling feeling that lingered in the air. Victor's explanations about the low rent and eager attitude raised more questions than they answered. As we concluded the tour, I couldn't help but notice a peculiar locked door in the hallway. When I asked about it, Victor was quick to dismiss it, saying it was a storage room that I wouldn't need access to. I felt a chill run down my spine, but I didn't press the matter further. We sat down in the living room to discuss the terms of the lease. Victor insisted on a cash payment for the first month's rent and deposit. Alarm bells rang in my head, but I was too desperate for a place to live and agreed to his terms. I moved in the following day. The place was oddly quiet, almost too quiet for a city apartment. There was an unsettling hollowness that made me feel like I was being watched. The locked door in the hallway continued to nag at me, and curiosity got the best of me. As I tried to jiggle the doorknob, I found it surprisingly unlocked. The room was pitch dark, and I fumbled to turn on the light. My heart skipped a beat when the room's contents came into view. It was filled with old, tattered children's toys and a dusty crib. I shuddered and quickly shut the door, locking it back in place. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing strange, muffled noises coming from the hallway. It was as if someone were moving things around in that locked room. I decided to investigate the next morning. The next day, I confronted Victor about the locked room and the strange noises. His demeanor changed, and he grew defensive. He insisted that it was just a storage room and that I had no business going inside. But my gut feeling told me something was amiss. While Victor was out, I decided to investigate further. I used a bobby pin to pick the lock and cautiously entered the room. The toys and crib were still there, but I noticed something even more unsettling. On one of the walls, there were scratch marks, as if someone had desperately tried to escape from the inside. My mind raced as I tried to make sense of the situation. What had happened in that room? Who had been kept there against their will? My imagination ran wild, and I knew I needed to find out more. That evening, I did some research on the building's history. It turns out that it had a dark past, with rumors of it being a former orphanage that had closed under mysterious circumstances. The children who had lived there were said to have endured unimaginable horrors. The following day, I confronted Victor with my findings. His cold, unfeeling demeanor gave way to anger, and he threatened to evict me if I continued to snoop around. I had to tread carefully, as I realized that I was dealing with someone who had a lot to hide. That night, the apartment felt even more oppressive. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was not alone. I lay in bed, my heart pounding, as I heard faint whispers and cries coming from the hallway. The sound of children's laughter and sobbing filled the air, and I knew I had to get to the bottom of this mystery. Determined to uncover the truth, I decided to break into the locked room once more, armed with a flashlight and a camera. As I entered the room, I couldn't believe what I saw. The walls were covered in eerie drawings, as if a child had tried to express their fear and suffering through art. The crib was stained with what looked like old blood, and a diary lay open on the floor. The diary contained disturbing entries written by a young girl named Emily, detailing her life in the orphanage and the horrors she had witnessed. She spoke of a cruel matron, hidden passages, and children who disappeared without a trace. The more I read, the more terrified I became. It was clear that the building held dark secrets, and Victor was connected to them in some way. I needed to leave, but I couldn't do it without evidence. As I crept out of the room, camera in hand, I heard footsteps in the hallway. Panic surged through me, and I hid in a closet. Victor entered the room and began muttering to himself, talking about needing one more sacrifice to appease the spirits. I snapped photos of him and his cryptic writings on the wall. After Victor left, I knew I had to escape and contact the authorities. I packed my essentials, including the diary and the incriminating photos, and made my way to the door. But as I reached for the handle, a piercing scream echoed through the apartment. It was Emily's voice, and it seemed to be coming from inside the walls. Driven by fear and a determination to save Emily, I followed the source of the screams. I discovered a hidden passage that led to a secret underground chamber. There, I found a room filled with dozens of old, dusty children's shoes and a small, rusted cage. I realized the truth. Victor was a sadistic kidnapper, keeping the spirits of the children he had taken in his twisted, macabre collection. He had somehow harnessed their suffering to gain power, and Emily was still trapped here, her spirit unable to move on. I knew I had to release Emily's spirit and bring justice to the other children who had suffered in this place. Armed with the diary, the photos, and a sense of determination, I confronted Victor in the underground chamber. He was chanting incantations and trying to perform a dark ritual. As I exposed the evidence, Victor's face contorted with rage. He lunged at me, and we struggled in the dimly lit chamber. Just as he was about to overpower me, the ghostly figure of Emily appeared, her pale face twisted in anger. She grabbed Victor, and with a deafening scream, they both vanished into thin air. With Victor gone, the apartment was no longer haunted. I handed over the diary and photos to the authorities, and they launched an investigation into the building's dark history. The place was sealed off, and its grim secrets were finally exposed. I moved out of the building and found a new, peaceful home. But the memory of those Craigslist ads and the horrors I had uncovered haunted me. It was a chilling reminder that darkness could lurk behind the most innocent-looking listings, and that we should always trust our instincts when something feels off. The Craigslist nightmare had come to an end, but its echoes continued to haunt my dreams, a stark reminder that the internet could be a portal to the darkest of places.